Really excited today because we have our friends and partners with Franklin Templeton joining us to talk about the latest Voice of the American Worker survey results. So it is my pleasure to introduce Jackie Reardon, head of the client experience for retirement at Franklin Templeton.
Great, thanks, Leah. This is the third year that we've done this research, and we wanted to be very clear that although there are some evergreen trends, which we'll talk about today, each year we do refresh the results and we do ask some different questions too to make it very timely. And you'll see that this year we've added a subtitle in the blue text right underneath the title of the presentation. You'll see that it reads Financial Anxiety, Reshaping Expectations for Benefits. So it is clear that participants and workers, they are stressed out given today's environment. But as we go through today's research, we'll definitely begin to understand some of the roadblocks and challenges that they're facing, but more importantly, the opportunities that exist for employers to address those roadblocks, and of course, for all of us to really partner with employers to do just that. So let's just take a quick overview of some of the things we'll cover today. So first and foremost, we'll take a look at the methodology used to create this research and timing. We'll also spend a few slides setting the stage and providing some context. So here's where I'll go through some of those evergreen trends I mentioned, some of the more shorter term environmental, economic happenings since the last time we shared our research, just to provide a little bit more context to the results that we'll share today. And then we'll get really deep into the research. So part one, we will cover the current economic climate and how it is accelerating financial stress and shifting back milestones like retirement. So part one is all about how American workers feel today. Part two, American workers feel the impact of the current economic climate when considering their plans for retirement and are reacting accordingly. Part two is all about what American workers are doing, how they're behaving because of those economic pressures. And then part three, American workers are turning to employers for more personalized support and improving well-being across all dimensions. This is really where we'll get into the types of tools, benefits, resources that workers are looking for, and ultimately how employers can help address those needs. So let's take a peek at the methodology used to create this survey. As I mentioned, our research is fielded in partnership with the Harris Poll, and the results of this year's research was fielded at the very end of this past calendar year, which is exactly the same timing as the last 2 years of research. The results represent respondents in a group of 1,000 US adults, all of whom are employed, all of whom have some version of retirement plan savings. And as you can see by the breakdown of regions and age, et cetera, this is really meant to just be an average snapshot of what the US worker is like today. And in fact, that generational age breakdown is very reminiscent of what the US workforce is today. So we'll take a look at the trends that we've seen year over year. And importantly, we'll also take a look at where we see some results or emphasis within a specific demographic group. And this year, I have to say, of all the years we've done this research, we have the most call outs of where we have some results that are a bit emphasized for certain groups. So we'll take a peek at that. So just a couple slides kind of giving a high level overview of some of the findings. So all in all, we're really seeing that today's economic climate is putting plans in jeopardy. So we're seeing that respondents feel that financial independence is at risk and their plans for retirement are at risk. Financial stress is up 7% year over year. And importantly, the feeling that people have of a sense of control over their finances is also decreasing rapidly. We're also seeing that the importance of things like financial independence are increasing, and the importance of addressing things like debt are increasing, even though that lack of control is decreasing. We're also seeing that as plans are in jeopardy, people are actually specifically delaying things like retirement, and unsurprisingly, things like soaring expenses and inflation are definitely one of the culprits in that delay of timing around retirement. People are in fact thinking about working, continuing to have a job in their later years. But all in all, people are really interested in having a more concrete plan as they plan for what their later years look like, which I think is a bright spot in some of the gloominess that we see in our results. And then we're also seeing that the Great Resignation has wound down, and instead people are really looking to their employer for some significant support and more tools and resources, and importantly, guidance. And then we're seeing things like, the Great Boomerang or the Great Return materialize, where people are not only not leaving their job, but some of them are actually coming back. So just some of the high level things that we'll take a look at in the next couple sections. But first and foremost, as I mentioned, I just want to take a couple slides to really provide some context to the results that we're seeing this year. First, some of the evergreen trends that we've been seeing now that we have 3 years under our belt of this research study. Number one is the fact that workers are continuing to seek improved well-being, and they need support in addressing those roadblocks. There's also a continued focus on well-being, which includes specifically financial well-being. And there's some really, really key opportunities that we'll get into where employers can provide some support in helping employees seek that improved financial well-being. And workers are also remaining way more focused on financial independence versus the traditional concept of retirement. I think this is a really interesting concept that's come out of our research, meaning that everyone's not just sort of working towards one age where everyone will collectively stop working and then go on to have a more traditional concept, kind of the picture that everyone has in mind when they think of somebody retiring. Every single year we see in our results that people are saying, my parents' retirement, my grandparents' retirement, that's not really what I have in mind for my later years. And in fact, it's financial independence that I'm after, and I need the support and resources in order to seek that. And as always, every single year, we find that there's urgency around helping employers evaluate the benefit offerings that they are making available to employees, and really considering what ways they can evolve that support to meet employee needs, specifically around improving financial well-being and reaching milestones like financial independence. So those are some of the evergreen trends that have come out of our research, but also thought it was important to just sort of touch base on some of the economic things that have happened since the last time that we shared our results. So as all of you know very well, inflation is at a 4-decade high. It ended 2022 at 6.5%. We also saw the 6th most volatile year in the markets in 2022 since the Great Depression. And we also saw quite a bit of a drawdown last year. So 25%, the S&P 500 was down 25% last year. That drawdown is sort of still trickling on. It's reaching a long-term average that we've seen in sort of major drawdowns since World War II. And then for those of you who are familiar with our Anatomy of a Recession program, which keeps track of about 13, 14 indicators to predict whether or not we're headed to a recession, our recession dashboard is sort of blinking red. So if you also add in that feeling or concern that participants and employees have around a looming recession, this paints a pretty stressful picture to put into some context the way that they're feeling today. So we see evergreen trends, we see some shorter term economic pressures. And then, as I mentioned a few moments ago, we're also seeing some workforce trends shift as well. So the Great Resignation is over. The Great Resignation that all of us heard about ad nauseum last year. Every single day, I feel like I was getting another article or newsletter about it, another webinar invite, et cetera. Our research last year was very well anchored around the concept of the Great Resignation. So that has definitely shifted. We see that 66% of respondents say that the current economic environment is actually encouraging them to stay with their employer. Although I think it's important for us to not ignore the 34% that say that the current climate is encouraging them to leave, but the majority of folks are saying, I am going to stay with my employer. You'll see in sort of the smaller text towards the bottom, that's increased significantly for the baby boomers. So 78% of baby boomers say, I am staying with my employer because of this current environment. Not only are people staying, but we're also seeing people come back. So whatever they're going to end up calling this, the Great Return, the Great Boomerang, whatever whatever the fancy name is for it. But 47% say that they actually know somebody at their company who has come back to an old job that they left in the last 5 years. And in fact, 37% admitted that they themselves have actually considered returning to a job that they left in the last 5 years. Those two stats are actually increased or emphasized for the younger two generations, so the millennials and Gen Z. Many of you may know this, but the millennial generation has actually made up the largest portion of the US workforce for the last several years. So I think whenever we see a bit of an emphasis for the millennial generation, it's important to take note. And then we're also seeing that some of the more individualized, personalized goals that people are seeking are continuing to gain traction and are increasingly more important to respondents. So those goals include things like having enough money to live comfortably to the end of my life, having enough money to stop working when I want to, feeling satisfied with my financial well-being. We've asked these questions every single year, and every single year they're more and more important to respondents. And if you think about goals like that, they're very individualized. So the way that I'm going to feel satisfied with my financial well-being is going to be very different than any of my coworkers or colleagues, friends, et cetera. So, people are really rallying around this more individualized approach to what their financial goals are for their later years. But all in all, regardless of the longer term trends we see, regardless of the shorter term economic pressures that many employees and participants are dealing with, and regardless of the workforce trends shifting, our research is very well anchored in the fact that financial independence continues to be the North Star for employees and participants. 81% say I am more focused on becoming financially independent, which we have defined as having enough money or wealth to cover your living expenses without having to have a job or rely on somebody else. So that is the ultimate goal that people have. And we see that the urgency around that, or the increased interest in seeking financial independence, continues to increase every single year. So as we go through the next couple sections and really dive into the research and results, we'll just want to have part of this context in the back of our head that ultimately is the key goal for employees today. So let's get into part one. Part one being that the current economic climate is accelerating financial stress, and it's shifting back key milestones like retirement. So as I mentioned at the onset, part one is all about how employees and participants feel today. And the picture is a bit grim. So 66% of respondents say that they are feeling the negative effects of the current economic climate, and it's showing up in very specific ways. So folks are admitting to feeling anxious about the future, about having trouble falling asleep, about having strained personal relationships. You'll notice at the very right hand of the chart, 22% admitted to feeling distracted at work. That's actually emphasized to 30% for Gen Z. But I would also argue that those are just the people who are admitting to feeling distracted at work, and there's probably even more folks that actually do feel distracted at work. So most people are feeling the negative effects of today's environment, and it's showing up in very specific ways. And I think that this is starting to paint a picture for us about how we can't think about things like financial stress in a silo. When people are stressed financially, they're bringing that into other pieces and parts of their life, including their job and their work. Every single year, we've asked respondents to rate their stress levels across 3 areas of well-being. And for us, the 3 key areas of well-being are mental well-being, physical well-being, and financial well-being. Every single year, we see stress has increased across all 3 areas. But the most important takeaway is at the very top of this slide. And here's where, this is a concept where all of us have anecdotally understood, but it's great for us to have some confirmation in our statistics. So up at the top, you'll see that 79% of respondents said that their mental health is affected by their financial health. And 73% said my physical health is affected by my financial health. I just want to read those one more time because they're very, very important. 79% of respondents said my mental health is affected by my financial health, and 73% say my physical health is affected by my financial health. So again, confirmation about something that all of us have long sort of suspected, that again, that stress that people feel in their financial life spills over into other areas of their life. We also asked around some of the key concerns. So if people are stressed about their finances, why? What are their key concerns? As I mentioned earlier, you'll see at the right hand of this slide in kind of like the blue highlighted box that everyone's very concerned about being able to reach financial independence. And that's something that's increased 5% even since last year. That is their number one concern. How do I get to be financially independent? But we see some other key areas of concern and priority. So things like paying off student loan debt, saving for education expenses, saving for health expenses, and paying off other debt, which is another key area of concern that has increased 7% since last year, which is totally understandable. The Harris poll shared with us that credit card debt is actually at a 20-year high, and folks have failed to pay off their holiday debts, which you might be thinking, that's not that big of a deal, it was only a couple months ago, but actually they mean the year prior. So the holiday season of 2021, most people still haven't paid off those debts. So debt continues to be a roadblock year over year. For those of you who are familiar with last year's research study, we took a deep dive into debt, and it just continues to be a huge roadblock for folks and a key area of concern. And not only is there stress, but it's also, really putting into jeopardy some of the plans that respondents and employees and participants have. So here we see that 64% say my ability to reach financial independence is in jeopardy because of today's environment. We also see that 61% say my retirement plans are in jeopardy because of today's environment. You may notice at the bottom that those two feelings are emphasized for both women and millennials. And then we also see about half of folks, and even more so for millennials, they feel that their feelings of job security are also in danger because of today's environment. Just diving a bit deeper into this concept of well-being, we've asked every single year around how people value those three key areas of well-being. So mental well-being, physical well-being, financial well-being. We've asked them, which of those three areas is the most important to you? And every single year, folks come back with even more equal importance. So thinking about them now almost across the board, just as equally as important, with financial health increasing in importance each year. As a follow-up, we've also asked, which of those three areas do you feel like you have the least control over? And every single year, folks say, my financial well-being is the area where I feel the least in control. And every single year they say it's even less control than last year. Where now we find that there's an 8% gap between the feeling of financial well-being as important and the feeling of control that folks have over their financial well-being. And again, this is continuing to compound, and we're starting to see a shift in plans because of all of these feelings of stress related to financial health. 73% say soaring living expenses has really changed the way they envision my retirement. Same with inflation. 73% say inflation is directly affecting my retirement plans. And 63% of respondents say the current economic climate has really affected my plans to retire early. So we're seeing that not only are people stressed and they're really feeling the impact of today's environment, but they're starting to shift their plans for their later years. So all in all, again, the picture is pretty grim. The financial stress is palatable in today's participant and employee population. And really the key takeaway here for employers is that there's just never been a better time to re-engage, really get back in front of employees, check in, make sure that they're okay, see how they're feeling. I think so many employers have a really well thought out and developed communication strategy, or they already have tools and resources available that maybe, to date participants haven't been that interested in. Well, today they are, and they definitely, we have a much more open environment where employees would be more likely to engage. So the takeaway isn't like go create more and provide more resources necessarily. Maybe it's just a matter of getting back in front of employees with existing tools and resources that employees can have access to and check in, sort of do a little bit of a self-audit in their financial life. So as I mentioned, part one, all about how employees are feeling today. And now in part two, we'll take a deeper look into what they're doing about that. So American workers, they're feeling the impact of the current economic climate when they're considering their plans, and they're reacting accordingly. And one of the highlights is that they're delaying retirement, and specifically by 3 years. And I just want to be clear about the way that we asked this question. So we asked folks before the current economic climate, when were you planning to retire? And because of today's economic climate, when are you planning to retire? And they specifically said age 62 versus age 65. When I first saw this stat, the first thing that popped into my mind was, well, it's 2023, people are living longer. Perhaps that's, kind of pushing this trend, but that's actually not true. And life expectancy has decreased in the last couple of years. So this is directly tied to the current economic environment. Interestingly, at the bottom of the slide, you'll also see perhaps a breadcrumb for us to consider later on in engaging employers about benefits, but 69% said, if my employer did provide post-retirement benefits, I would consider retiring earlier. The really good news about all of the stress I just mentioned in the last section and some of the shifts in plans that we'll talk about in this section is that participants want to get more involved. So they're stressed out, yes, but they're not going away and hiding or sort of waiting this storm out. They want to take a more active role in managing their finances. And in fact, 71% say this current economic climate actually motivates me to take a more active role in managing my finances. And they're looking to employers to help incentivize that. So 77% say my employer should provide incentives for good financial habits. So if employees and participants are taking a more active role, we really wanted to get to the bottom of what that means. What are they actually doing when they are taking a more active role? This slide outlines some of the day-to-day financial behaviors that participants are taking in becoming more active in managing their financial life. So number one, as you can imagine, they're cutting discretionary spending. Number two, of concern, I would imagine to any employer, is that they're looking for a side hustle or side job. I know that we live in like a gig economy, so it's not that uncommon, but I feel like if I was an employer, that would give me a little bit of pause thinking about a majority of my employees perhaps looking for some sort of side work. They're also delaying big purchases. They're re-examining providers. They're thinking about taking out a new loan, et cetera. So I think that there's both some interesting positive behaviors here, but also some of concern as well. In the next slide, we wanted to dive in a bit deeper to what they're doing related to their retirement life. So last slide, how are they managing and taking a more active role in their day-to-day financial life? This slide, how are they managing and taking a more active role as it relates to their retirement? Number one, which is great news, is that they're contributing to their retirement accounts. So they're still contributing to the retirement accounts, which is great. Number two, we already talked about they're delaying retirement. They're also re-examining their retirement-related providers. So I think, reasonable activities. Some things, though, that they're doing that are of concern. They are moving money from their retirement into cash. They are taking loans out against their retirement plans. So I think that there's some breadcrumbs here again to think about the types of benefits and solutions, some of which, as you all know, are more readily available now with the passage of Secure 2.0 for an employer to consider adding as a benefit or a resource so that it can help address the needs that employees have when they're moving money to cash or they're taking out a loan, et cetera. So we took a look at how they're sort of, the more active role that participants and employees are taking, and really what that's creating is this shift in expectation around their later years. So 58% said, I plan on working during retirement, and that's actually 68% from the baby boomer generation. That whole trend is up 6% since we started our research. We also see that 60%, as I mentioned in the last slide, they're still contributing. They're actually increasing their retirement savings, which is great news. But right next to it, that 40%, really concerning. 40% say I've decreased my retirement savings. And that's actually increased for both women and for lower income respondents. So people are still thinking that they're going to have to work during retirement. There's a bit of a mixed picture here when we think about either increasing or decreasing retirement contributions. But all in all, my favorite piece of this slide is in the bottom left. 65% say, I would rather a more concrete plan for how I'm going to spend my later years. This is increased for the baby boomer generation. But all in all, this trend has increased 13% since we started our research. So up 13%, people are saying, I need guidance, I need a plan. I really want to have a more concrete plan for how I'm going to spend our later years. And I think there's a huge opportunity for all of us to really think about how best to engage and help them out there. So American workers are feeling this impact. They're making some shifts. They're doing some things, some positive behaviors we see that we probably want to help incentivize, some concerning behaviors that we want to think about. What are some better avenues, resources, et cetera. But all in all, the key takeaway here is that people need advice and they need guidance. And they're specifically looking to the workplace, to their employer, to really help both incentivize good behavior, but also give them the guidance and advice that they need to navigate this economic climate. So let's get into that for sure, and really take a look at what employers can be doing in today's environment to help provide that type of guidance and support. So part 3, American workers are turning to employers for more personalized support in improving well-being across all dimensions. And the name of the game here is absolutely holistic support. So 70% of respondents say, I would like more holistic options. With the help of the Harris poll, we defined holistic support as the ability to assess all financial goals together. So participants, employees are really looking for that type of resource and support across all areas of their financial life. They don't want to be seen as just a future retiree. They want to be seen as a multidimensional person with many different sort of financial needs and goals. And they want to be able to have that support that helps them across all of those. And when they get that type of support, we're finding that that really, really matters to participants and employees. And in fact, 71% say it matters to them that their employer helps them address things like the current economic climate. It makes them feel better about where they work, how much effort they put into work, how long they'll stay at their current job, their likelihood to actually potentially refer other people to that company. So it really, really matters to them. And in fact, it matters even more to the younger generation. So if 71% on average say it matters to them, 93% of the Gen Z population say it matters to them, and 83% of the millennial population say it matters to them that their employer provide that type of support. At the bottom of the screen too, you'll also see some really powerful stats. 68% of respondents say, I feel taken care of when I see my employer addressing the current economic climate. And 59% say, I count on my employer to help me navigate turbulent economic times. That's actually emphasized to 69 for the millennial generation. Again, the largest piece of the US workforce. They are counting on their employer to help them navigate turbulent economic times. And we're living through one right now. So we wanted to take a look at that as a case study. So if it matters to participants and employees how their employer addresses turbulent times, let's think about this current time. So inflation. We asked some questions to respondents around how their employer actually addressed this inflationary environment. 70% said my employer did something. They provided a salary increase, they provided a bonus, they made it more flexible in terms of when they could work from home, they provided some commuting subsidies and other perks, or even just communicating existing benefits. Again, you'll see that right kind of square in the middle of this chart, which again, I think is perhaps low-hanging fruit for employers. There's probably tools and resources they already have available. They just need to re-communicate those. So 70% say my employer did something, although 30% said they did nothing, which I think is a bit interesting and concerning. But even though 70% said my employer did something, 60% of employees and respondents said, I'm unsatisfied with how my employer addressed the current economic climate. So we just saw that it really matters to employees that their employer address turbulent times. But here we see, kind of looking at inflation as a case study, there's some room for improvement for how employers can actually address. I mentioned a few times already how exciting it is to see in the results that employees are taking a more active role in managing their financial life. 9 in 10 employees have taken steps to navigate this economic uncertainty on their own. And I think as we look at some of the ways they're doing that, we can piece together benefits and resources that perhaps would be helpful for an employer to consider either evolving or adding or enhancing. So number one, employees are looking for access to a financial advisor or a financial coach. They're looking for advice and guidance as a number one option. They're also looking for some automation. So number 2 on this list, you'll see auto enrollment in savings accounts. You'll see that further called out on the right hand of that slide. 76% say automating my savings during uncertain times gives me peace of mind. And even further, 72% say I expect to be able to easily adjust my plans to combat the current economic climate. So they're looking for more automation and sort of ease of adjustment in their investments and solutions. But then they're looking for plenty of other things. They're looking for tax guidance, help with budgeting, help with managing debt, et cetera. So again, they're looking beyond just things like retirement, and they're looking across the full spectrum of their financial needs. That's how they're seeking out tools and resources. And I think some breadcrumbs for us to consider what to make available at the employer level. Just want to dive in a little bit deeper to that whole concept of advice. So we saw on the last slide, the number one preferred resource from our respondents is access to a financial professional or access to a financial coach, advice, et cetera. This is a question that we've asked respondents year over year related to that very topic. So we've asked, hey, do you have this resource and you use it, or you don't have this resource, but if you did, you would use it. And the summed total of that includes 58% having an interest in access to a financial professional, 64% saying that they have interest in financial planning tools, and then 53% having interest in access to financial education. You'll see on this slide, we don't mention the word retirement at all. Again, just further emphasizing that whole concept of retirement, yes, is a very important point and topic, but I think we've actually done a pretty good job of instilling in folks the need to save for retirement. What they're looking for beyond that is help in all other areas of their financial life. Again, like tax guidance, budgeting, managing debt, financial education, access to advice, et cetera. So really thinking about benefits and resources through that lens. And it's not just access to these types of tools and resources. Employees, participants are looking for more personalized options as well. Not only are they interested in it, but they do feel like it would incentivize better behavior. So we see on this slide that 78% say, I am interested in more personalized 401k investment options. 77% said more personalized 401k investment options would actually encourage me to participate or contribute more. And even further, 75% say, if my employer offered something like a customized managed account solution as an option in my 401k, I'd be more likely to stay in the plan if I retired or changed employers. Those last two are also of note, enhanced for the millennial population as well. For those of you familiar with the research study last year, we did go a little bit deeper on the concept of comfort level in providing data and information about yourself as a participant in exchange for more personalized solutions, because we wanted to really sort of debunk that roadblock that exists. And we see that all in all, participants are very willing to provide more information with their employer in order to get a more personalized recommendations for tools and solutions. This is my favorite slide and a question that we've asked every single year in our research, which is if your employer had some extra money to either add a benefit or enhance an existing benefit, what are the type of benefits that you'd be most interested in having access to? Every single year, we see things like an increase to pay or an increase to a 401k match be number 1 and 2 always. Sometimes they flip flop, but they're always number 1 and 2, which I think that's totally reasonable. Those are the stalwarts. As you can see here, we also have noted that increase to pay is up significantly since we started this research, which again, putting that through the lens and context of where we started the conversation today around the financial stress that people feel in today's environment, totally understandable why that is so increased. But we get a lot of great ideas here related to other tools and benefits that employees are super interested in. So things like putting money into an investment that would turn into a guaranteed income stream in retirement, access to emergency savings, access to a health savings account, help paying off student loan debt, help saving for my children's educations, etc. We see here, again, a lot of breadcrumbs and ideas for how employers can really consider evolving the total benefit offering that they provide to their employers. And again, what a great opportunity and what perfect timing, just given that many of these things are more readily available and are even more readily tools that employers can think about deploying given the passage of Secure 2.0. We did ask a couple quick questions, which I'll just mention, and all of you have access to this information and can dive deeper. All this research is yours to have and use as you'd like. We asked some questions around the appetite for state-mandated plans versus employer-sponsored plans. The key takeaway there is people are more interested in employer-sponsored plans. We also asked some questions around ESG. So participants widely, particularly the younger generation, do have an interest in ESG options, although many don't have access, which is understandable given the fact that many plan sponsors are still trying to sort out sort of the fiduciary considerations. We also ask questions around guaranteed income as more and more solutions come to market that provide guaranteed income options in plan. We wanted to make sure people were interested in, and very, very much so they are. And then also 529 plans. So as we continue to have conversations around really thinking about that total benefit offering and adding something like a workplace 529 option to further build out that total benefit offering, many folks, particularly the parents, respondents to our parents, have interest in contributing to something that would help them save for their children's education. So really kind of coming back to where we started here, we covered a lot around how employees and participants feel today, what they're doing because of how they feel, and then ultimately how employers can really help support them, and really anchoring around this concept that employees, participants, they're really seeking financial independence. That is their number one concern, their number one goal. So really thinking about, as an industry, how can we rally around employers to help provide the types of tools and resources that are needed to really make sure that we are giving folks the most opportunity to seek financial independence. Just thinking about next steps for employers to consider. Obviously, I mentioned it a couple of times, but really spending the time to understand Secure 2.0 and what are the tools and resources that are now available to them. Evaluating the communication and education strategy that they have in place. So as I mentioned, there's probably many tools and resources that employers already have available, and it's a perfect opportunity to re-engage with their workforce and remind them, get back out to them. As we saw, people have much more of an appetite now to get more involved with their financial health and well-being. So you'll probably see a much better engagement rate in today's environment. Obviously, partnering with a trusted financial professional is a must, and really being able to digest some of the things like Secure 2.0 or some of the other key takeaways can much better be done in partnership with a trusted retirement plan professional. Reviewing providers, perfect opportunity to sort of go back out to even existing providers and make sure that they understand what's new and available to them, what technologies have been rolled out since last time they spoke, to make sure that they're making their job as efficient as possible in managing that plan. Analyzing plan design. And again, I think that goes hand in hand with Secure 2.0 too, and really thinking about, do I have the right things available to my workforce? Are there things I should consider and kind of evaluating and evolving in the future? And then surveying the workforce. So our Voice of the American Worker survey is absolutely meant to be kind of an average, a snapshot across the country, across industry, et cetera. But as many of you know, there are certain industries that have a very, very specific interests. There's regions of the country that'll have sort of an emphasis on certain things. So if an employer doesn't already, I think it's a really, really good add to make sure that they have a consistent survey that goes out, even annually, to their workforce to make sure that they're really staying in front of the high priorities that their unique employees have. And then, of course, Franklin Templeton, we're here to help you, and we're here to help employers across the full spectrum of tools and resources. So whether that be through plan benchmarking services and resources, educational content, we have a ton of it across many, many different topics. Research like this Voice of the American Worker research, plenty of market insights. I mentioned AOR earlier, which is our Anatomy of a Recession program. We have plenty of other tools and resources that really help digest what's happening in the markets and how people, employers, participants, investors can be thinking about it. Lots of checklists that can be used with employers to really think through evaluating plan design and plan audits, et cetera. And then obviously our survey here too. So if anybody wanted to leverage the survey for their own use and kind of get some ideas on questions and topics to ask within their own workforce, we'd be happy to partner there. And then just wrapping up with the resources that are available to all of you. So I mentioned that this survey is available for your use in any way you would like. All of the content related to Voice of the American Worker is approved for a public audience. So this full presentation we also have a flyer, summary flyer. We have a landing page, which will soon have some summary videos. We have a significant amount of social media content. So if you'd like to leverage that in any way, we have full recordings of the presentation, plenty of other things that we would be happy to make available. It's really important to us that this research be used as a data set within the industry. So if you would like to quote any of this research or use it for your own purposes, very, very happy to partner with you and do that. We really want to make sure that it's a tool for all of you to use. Leah, let me just turn it back over to you to wrap things up.
Thanks, Jackie. Currently, I don't see any questions in our chat box, but I do want to give maybe a couple seconds, minutes, just to see if there's any questions that do come in that we can answer now.
And Leah, maybe I'll just share one quick question that keeps coming up in a couple sessions I've had so far, particularly with a plan sponsor audience I had a couple weeks ago. But there's a question that we asked related to post-retirement benefits. 69% of respondents actually mentioned an interested in post-retirement benefits. So we asked that question a little bit more broadly. I think people have asked a couple times, like, what do you mean by post-retirement benefits? Health benefits, investment-related benefits. So we did ask that question a bit broadly, but I think that's an area that is of high interest that we're interested in kind of going back into and diving a bit deeper into future iterations of our survey. So kind of happy to circle back with that and keep everyone posted on what sort of trends we see in that area, because I know tools and resources are kind of coming to market that help address that ask a bit.
Thanks, Jackie. I do see some questions now in our Q&A. So yes, this presentation will be available. We'll be posting it on the Resource Center under the Franklin Templeton partner folder. So you can look for that very soon. And then one other question, I believe this is CE credits, right, Jackie? Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So folks listening in today can get, professional credit. We also have it approved for SHRM and HRCI credit. So if you wanted to leverage this for a client event or seminar, we've had success in doing that as well for, the plan sponsor HR audience.
Awesome. All right. Well, I think that is the questions for today. If you have any more questions that maybe you think of after the webinar, I know that usually is what happens for me. Feel free to reach out to us on the RPAG support email. I'm happy to get you in touch with the Franklin Templeton team if you do have any other questions that do come up.
Great. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.